Those strawberry Pop-Tarts keeping you alive.
Yeah, it's hard to exercise self-control. They put 2 in a packet as if you're only gonna eat one.
Nah.
Never happens like that.
Yeah.
You gotta have like divine self-control
Divine self-control.
to just eat one.
Yep.
I don't know how people do it. It's crazy to me.
I mean, I've done it.
Yeah?
But yeah, it's
Holy crap.
yeah. I know, right? You too, Calvin. You can do it. I believe.
I don't know. I mean, I had to buy 4 to eat one because there was only one left. So it was one in the individual package, and someone was nice enough to put it in a Ziploc so it stayed fresh
Nice.
as preserved Pop-Tart can be. But, whatever. I'm
Nice.
not the judge. It was good, so no regrets.
So
No regrets.
yeah, I'm just replying. There's a band who is playing Flood City Fest who contacted me about making merch for them. So hoping to nail that down real quick.
Did you hear that my Epic's playing?
Yeah, did you hear that they're the band I'm talking to about merch?
Dude, no way.
Yeah.
What? All right.
Yeah. Yeah, so I want to...
So wild.
Tell Cal I didn't want to be creepy, but I wanted to comment swoon on his pictures. I might still do it.
Kendra said she didn't want to be creepy, but she wanted to comment and swoon on your pictures.
No, just comment the word swoon.
Oh, comment the word swoon. Which,
That wouldn't have been creepy.
It's less weird if I tell my husband I'm going to do it, right?
she said it's less weird if I tell my husband I'm gonna do it.
I love you too, Kendra.
Oh, yeah, so for those listening, Calvin is a bit of an internet merch model for Chris Bernstorff merch. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right. I was like, I don't know, maybe Calvin's doing modeling gigs elsewhere.
No.
I don't know every detail of his life.
No, but dude, Chris hit me up about it, and I was like, sure, it sounds cool. And he was really just encouraging me one day in the kitchen. We just kind of talked. And he's like, dude, you could probably model for Kohl's, whatever you want. And I was like, I don't know, never really thought about it, but he mentioned his merch was selling. So if you want to help me, sure. If you believe I could do it, sure. Let's do the pictures. I'll help you guys out, and I guess the photos actually came out semi decent. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe I'll insert some right now into the video portion of the podcast. There's a picture. There's another picture.
You
Look
don't
at
have
this
to.
other picture.
You
Here
really
is
don't have to.
yet another.
You really don't need to know.
Calvin, there's going to be so much Calvin on this screen. It's going to be out of control.
Can we please not?
There'll just be Calvin all around Calvin's face. I mean,
God.
it has to happen now. If I don't do it, I'm going to get angry emails.
No
It's
one's putting you
Why?
up to this.
Why would you refer to graphics that were gonna be added and not add them?
No one's
like-
pressuring you to do this, Josh.
Check out this clip from Calvin's newest music video, and then there's just nothing. That's not a thing that we have access to because I don't think it exists, people. But if it did, yeah, that's, you don't tease people like that and give them nothing.
Did it be like the clip from Pootie Tang where he's singing in his no lyrics in a song?
Gosh.
It's completely absurd in every way.
Yeah, I'm kind of upset that movie was referenced ever, but especially on this show. For anyone that heard that reference and is like, why is Calvin ever watching a movie with a filthy name like that? It is a really ridiculous name. The movie itself is not filthy. It's not kid appropriate, but it's something else.
Yeah, my apologies in advance. I did not know we were live.
Well,
Anyway,
here's a clip from said movie. Judge for yourself.
Longest movie clip I've ever seen in my life.
See how dumb this was, Calvin? I didn't show a clip, and I referenced it, and now I'm gonna make people angry.
We don't have to though.
Yeah, we do. You brought this on yourself.
You wanted this.
The movie's
Oh
called
my gosh.
Pootie Tang, and it's useless.
Dirty D, you a batty daddy lamata tebit shy.
It's useless in every way.
All right, so that was a clip from Calvin's favorite movie, supposedly.
I would say favorite.
Yeah, that's a clip from a movie. It's a film that exists. We'll give it that.
Yes, it does exist.
Yeah. All right, so Calvin, we have been recording this whole time. I apologize
Sick.
I mean, you just have to be ready for this stuff. Just assume that it's going to happen each time.
You live and you learn.
Yep. Calvin, quick little version. What is something that has been... we'll call this segment... I don't know if this will be a recurring segment, but we're going to call this segment for this time, What You've Been Eating. I know you just ate Pop-Tarts, but I'm saying more like, what are you taking in life that's feeding your mind and your heart? And these could be things that are like serious or things that are just kind of like giving you some joy.
Well, I guess like right now, Tuesday, Bethany said something that was really cool at Throne Room, and it's a passage in Isaiah where the Lord mentions that He's gonna act, and the fact that He's gonna act is not for our sake or for the sake of the people, because like the people at that time profaned His name, but He says, for my name's sake, I'm going to act and I'm going to do a work. And I feel like for me, oftentimes, even still, I'm kind of in a place where I feel like my actions or my inaction will cause God to move or not to move in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth of the matter is, like, He's going to move for His name's sake because His glory is at stake. And whenever His glory is at stake, He's going to step in, He's going to act. So, like, it's been helping me more and more to trust God's promises, knowing that it's up to Him to fulfill those. And it's not based on me at all. Mm-hmm. Like, for His glory and for His name's sake, He is going to come through on what He said He's going to do because He's not a liar. So, like, when she spoke that yesterday, it really resonated with me a lot. It gave me a lot of hope and a lot of encouragement.
That's sick.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I
don't know, man. What about you? What you been snacking on?
I don't know. I was hoping you'd take longer so I could think more. So, I've been on like a big podcast kick lately, like listening. I went through a long period where I was just like, let's make this thing, but I wasn't really taking in other ones. So there are quite a few that I've been listening to, but a couple that have stood out are there's one called the At Home Dad podcast. So it's two guys who are work from home dads. And they just talk about like what it's like being at home dads. So that's been really cool and relevant. And they're dads with like a little bit older kids, you know. So it's been really cool to hear their situations and kind of like learn from them. It's I mean, there's a lot of language in it. So I don't listen to that around the kiddo. Usually I'll just toss in like a Bluetooth headphone whenever I'm listening to that. And then let's see. What else? Oh, the Creative Coping podcast with John LaBeouf, who we just had on the show a couple weeks ago. That one's been really rad. I really dig his approach and just the theme of his podcast. I know we've talked about his before, but it's definitely worth checking out. He's had a few podcast episodes where they talk about the ins and outs and like logistics of podcasting too. Which a lot of that stuff is, it's stuff that I'm aware of, but like it's really cool to me that like they're enabling and educating people that might be interested in starting their own, and just like letting them know, what it looks like to start your own and how it can be fairly simple. So those have been a couple cool ones. And then, I won't get into all of the ones that I've been listening to. But let's see. Oh, give me a second.
Oh, yeah.
So I was going to talk about something else, but I'm drawing a blank, Calvin. I would say if you haven't checked out the Bible Project stuff, that stuff's excellent. The guys that run it, they make animated videos about every book of the Bible.
Oh, yeah, dude. Those guys are rad.
And they're excellent. So on the more serious side, that's been really, really cool. I don't like keep up with everything that they do, but whenever I'm like reading a different book of the Bible, or like meeting with a couple guys going over Matthew and Mark, and sometimes we'll watch those videos, and they're really great. I mean, I've seen and read a lot of things like delving into the context of different biblical books, but these guys like really take it beyond just like general context, and bring a lot of like new, fresh life to reading the Bible. So, those are just a few nifty things that have been contributing to my mind and things. But yeah, we'll go ahead and call our guest and get into it. Today we have Anthony Shimanek. I just realized that I used to call him Antoine.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Why Antoine of all names?
Because it's close to Anthony. Yeah, I don't know.
That's fair.
Yeah. Sometimes you need nicknames for friends that are. I call you Cal. I call Andrew Broheapon. I don't know. Who knows why we do the things that we do?
I'm gonna call him Antoine at work and see if he freaks out.
Yeah, I don't know if he even remembers that.
Hey,
We'll see.
There he is.
it's me.
Anthony, do you remember there were times that I called you Antoine for no apparent reason?
Yeah, no, literally every time. I think for a while I think he forgot my name.
Nah, I knew it. It was just
like every single time.
Oh man, I didn't realize it was to that extent. I'm sorry,
That's
man.
fine. I was actually today. I was like, I wonder if he's gonna in the title he's gonna put like Antoine in like quotation marks in between my first and last name. I'm gonna be like, no, it can't be. That can't happen.
It's probably for the best that we don't. But yeah, I was telling Calvin, all right, like let's call Anthony, and then it hit me. It was like this repressed memory of or something. I was like, I used to call him Antoine.
Oh yeah, I don't even know how that originated.
It's just close to Anthony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's logical.
Yeah, it works. All right, so you ready to hop into this thing?
Yeah. I've been prepping my entire life for this.
Got some notes in your
you got a sermon for us
in your head and your heart.
Yeah. Actually, you guys can't talk at all. I'm just gonna talk for 2 hours.
That's fair.
Bet it's gonna be easy.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I'm just gonna pull a Pasic and just talk for hours.
I might just take a nap then.
There you go.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll just put it out there.
Just set an alarm for midnight.
Yeah.
Should be set.
Dude.
Cal, do you want us to open us up with a word of prayer, and then we'll hop into this boy?
Yeah. Heavenly and gracious Father, Lord, we thank you. Thank you, Jesus, for yet again another story and another testimony of your goodness and your mercy. And Father, just your blessing on Anthony's life and the man you've created him to be. And Lord, I ask that during this time that you be glorified in our conversation, that our hearts would be edified as we just like talk to one another about our stories and what you've done in us and through us, and that our listeners as well will be blessed through the things that are said. Just bring unity to your body and perspective. Father, we ask in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
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 All right. This is the Let God Die podcast. This is Josh.
And this is Calvin.
And our guest today is
My name is Anthony.
Anthony Shimanek.
Yep.
All right.
Good. The pronunciation was correct. So
Yes,
it's
nailed
good.
it.
Good start.
What is Shimanek? Like what region of this globe?
Mainly the European region. I don't know. I was told it was Polish, but I think it's just like a mutt. It's like all of them just thrown into one. So I don't actually know.
Yeah.
Never really cared to, I guess. I don't know.
Maybe we could just take a break and hop on ancestry.com.
Yeah. Let me just send in like my blood sample to him. I'll get that real quick.
Yeah, and then we'll pick up the podcast episode whenever you get the results back.
Yeah.
25 days long podcast.
Hey,
Yeah.
whatever it takes.
Airtime.
It'll be a process.
It's constant. It's actually just a black screen for like the other 24 days.
Yeah. So Anthony, I'm excited to talk to you, man, because I've known you for, I guess, more than 15 years, but for like the longest time, it was kind of, I just saw you like in and out of life, not really consistently. And then there were periods that I saw you more regularly. And then I don't really know what life has looked like the last couple of years. So I'm excited to dive into this. But before we get there, tell us what you do. And what life looks like for you nowadays, and then we'll kind of get to the origin stories of this guy.
What do I do? Well, let's start. I guess we'll go with occupation first. I manage a secondhand goods store, also known as a pawn shop. So, outside of that, I mean, that's what I do for work. Dealing with the public all day, and sometimes it sucks, sometimes it's better, but I guess like the main part is like dealing with people all the time. You learn how to deal with a lot of different people, not so good people and people that you end up building a relationship with, which is kind of cool thing that comes out of it.
And you work with Calvin, right?
I do.
Anthony's my boss.
Sadly.
Yeah, that's technically Anthony's position is
Yeah, technically. That's a weird thing to think of because I've like my whole life was never in like a management role. Mm-hmm. Even there, like before I took that role, it was just like a normal associate, like everyone else.
Yeah.
So it was a weird transition, but a lot of learning.
Yeah, and you refer to it as a secondhand goods shop. How would that be differentiated from more of a typical pawn shop? Is it more like semantics of a name?
I would say the legality side of it is like on a pawn where like people, you basically give them a loan and they still have ownership of what they give you. Where we actually buy the rights to it. We actually buy it from them, and they can come buy it from us back. Mm-hmm. But that's basically the only main difference.
Yeah.
It's like technicalities.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've asked Calvin some questions about that kind of thing, and it sounds like you guys, the owners, are trying to have like I guess more integrity in the process than just like a typical like pawn shop, from what I can gather.
Yeah, it's funny because like in our case where we like own the stuff, we actually would have like more room to be shady. Legally, we could do whatever we want with people's stuff, and they honestly really couldn't do anything. But I guess like at that point, that's not our goal. Our goal has always been to like help people and like I don't know, give them the best give them the best for what they got, and not really take advantage of people. Doesn't always seem that way to them when sometimes like they don't pay on their stuff and we have to sell it because we have to make money. But that's the primary goal for us outside of being a business, is just like to be a help to the community, especially like the people that are less fortunate.
Yeah, it's a different kind of business too. It's not for everyone.
No.
By no means, but it's so much opportunity even to just like reach out and just meet people where they are, and like Anthony was saying, like to be a blessing to someone. Like it really is, like knowing that we're able to do that. Like we try to do that as much as we possibly can within the parameters of the law. So
yeah, it's tough. It gets very hard when you deal with a lot of people that don't really see that vision and they think like you're just out to get money out of them. It can become really easy to like grow bitter towards humanity because you just see the worst of people sometimes when it comes to like just needing money and whatever circumstances that they're in.
Yeah, that's fair. So Anthony, can you share a little bit with people about I guess just like your journey of faith? Like I know that we knew each other from going to the same church. That's how I met Calvin too, from that same church. I'm assuming that it was not just like came to Jesus at a young age and things have been smooth sailing. And but yeah, if you want to kind of like walk us through that journey, getting us closer to now, wherever you want to take that.
Oh, let's see. I have a hard time remembering like what I have to do tomorrow or like yesterday. So we'll see how my recollection is. I guess like as far back as I can remember, like I've always been in church. Where I guess the difference between other people that would have the same story would be, it wasn't like my family just went to church. Like my family was pretty involved. Pretty much my entire childhood, as long as I can remember. It just never was like something you would do on Easter or Christmas. But it was a real relationship for my parents, like with Jesus, which you think would make it super easy to like want to model that and follow after it. But I think with church and with just life in general, like we just bounced around a lot. So like we would move every 2 or 3 years. So within the same, like, I guess like region or like Metro Detroit. But with that, it just becomes very inconvenient to like drive 45 minutes to an hour every time you'd move to go to church. So like we would move churches too, and then like we would church shop for a little bit. And then I'm trying to think the timeline now. I would say like probably right before middle school is when like we started going to Metro. I don't know how familiar like the audience is with Metro. I'm sure at least some.
I think we've like referenced it by name a few times, but that's where
that church.
Me and Calvin know each other. That's where we know several of the guests that we've had on that still attend that church. I think when I first met Anthony, he was like a little kid in the middle school. Oh yeah,
it was probably right about the time. Probably not soon after that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was never involved with middle school ministry, but there were a bunch of kids that I would like see at different events.
God.
That
Good
were
for you.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you meant like thank God that I was not involved, so you didn't have to put up with me.
100%. Yes, that's exactly what I meant.
Good.
No, middle school is a whole nother animal, dude.
Yeah.
No joke.
I would say at that point, I was pretty ignorant still. Like I wouldn't say like at 12 years old, I like prayed a prayer and like accepted Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like I had no idea what that even meant. Like I just knew like, hey, like church is good, church is cool to me. But it was really like all I ever knew. It's not like I grew up in a like any kind of household with any kind of like real life problems. Like never like really had like struggles with money. Definitely wasn't rich, but definitely like comfortable. I would say typical like suburban middle class life.
Gotcha.
Like my parents, they they had me when they were like 17, and like they're still together to this day. So it was never like marital things, never like abuse, yelling. So I don't know. I got
they were both teenagers.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. I didn't realize that. That's why.
Because they both went to the same high school you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like super Christian school.
Yeah.
Like it was pretty messy in that regard, but
Mm-hmm.
they got through. But yeah, I guess like the point of that is like I was super fortunate. Which kind of like I think it used to make me feel bad, kind of like where you hear testimonies of people that just like had like the most unfortunate upbringing, bad circumstances.
Yeah.
Just like got dealt really bad hands in life. And they come to Jesus in like a moment, and you're just like, that's insane. Like your whole life turns on a dime. And I'm like, I had a really cushy life in the church. And like, I still like to this day, I would say I'm like, still can't figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
But
are you saying there's like maybe even some guilt associated with like having like an easier circumstance, or like a comparison of like not having much of a story, quote unquote?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think especially like I think in high school, not to like skip too far ahead, we'll get back, but like when people would share their testimonies, like when I said like you have these like aha like insane God moments in people's lives, and I always felt so discouraged. Like my testimony can never reach anyone because it's just not powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I was there
really
for so
boring.
long, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Luckily, I've had a little bit of better perspective with it now. But like at the time, I remember thinking, like, what do I have to offer anyone with my story? Like it's nothing. Like if anything, if I was them, like I would sneer at it. I would be like, you got to be kidding me. Like don't talk to me about like having a hard time or like saying that your story is important comparatively. So yeah, I would say, like I said, in middle school, I didn't really have a clue about like what being a Christian was actually about.
Mm-hmm.
I just went to have fun and eat pizza, hear like halfway decent music at the time, thinking of, I guess, who played music. But I don't know. At the same time, looking back, I still think like God had put really cool people around me and like encouraging people around me. And at that time, I think really consistent people, which I think was key to not, I don't know. In middle school, I think back, I don't even know what year it was at this point. 2004, 2005? I just, comparatively to now, I don't think like middle school age was nearly as bad back then or hard, or I don't know what happened, but like the world has just like dug its claws deeper and deeper and like earlier in life. Cause you like look at middle schoolers now, like I've heard countless stories like people doing drugs, having sex. I'm like, my middle school experience, like nobody even talked about that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think in that case too, I was pretty fortunate to where I didn't really have too much of like temptation for the most part.
Calvin, what was that like for you? Like during those ages, would you say like similar thing that was not like a thing that was prevalent
for me in middle school, I was a super quiet, introverted kid growing up. So like, I was a kid who kind of just sat in the corner and like played with Connects. Like, I kind of did my own thing, right? Like, the only thing that mattered to me back then was skateboarding. Like, it wasn't drugs, it wasn't sex. I mean, that stuff was around, but like, it was not anything I was focused on. And like, I guess even the friends I was around weren't focused on that stuff either.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's completely different. Like, I recently had to sit my 9-year-old niece down and explain to her what suicide was at 9. And we had to like talk.
Did she have like questions or bring things up?
Well, she really didn't have a lot about it. She knew what it was, but she didn't necessarily know why people do it
Yeah, yeah.
and, what will cause a person to want to do that. So I was kind of just giving her signs of things to look out for in other people who could potentially be like suicidal. Like I was telling her, like, be a leader. Like if you see a person by themselves, like decide to be their friends and sit with them. Like even if it makes you the unpopular kid, like love that person. Like they're valued and they totally matter. And she told me if she had any more questions about things that she would talk to me about it. And I like made that door open, but I never thought I would have to do that at 9.
Yeah, single digits. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, 9 years old. I wasn't ready, but I knew I had to do something about it. So, but yeah, dude, I only want to be a sponsored skateboarder and travel the world. I didn't even plan to finish high school. I planned to get really good and travel.
Dude,
So-
back then that was the move though. I remember I was so bad at skateboarding, but like I loved the X Games so much.
Gosh, yes.
Mhm.
Like to this day, I just like I'll go on YouTube and I'll be like look up videos of Burnquist and Bucky Lassick, and like these were the glory days of extreme sports.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I was terrible.
Yeah,
So was I.
I was just gonna sorry to like diverge from convo a little bit, but I don't know, that's what we do sometimes. We just sidetrack or whatever.
Hey,
but,
why not?
yeah.
Just dudes.
But yeah, I think it was like similar because I'm quite a bit older than you, Anthony. I guess, but like back in my day, I'm not gonna be that guy, man. The back in my day guy. But yeah, I mean, I think like especially going to like the little Christian school that I went to, it was and just times being so different. Like there was no, I mean, like there wasn't really internet when I was in middle school, so it was like, as far as kids like accidentally seeing things, or purposely being able to see, like there was none of that unless like. Unless parents were careless about stuff or like older sibling like had something physical, like so it's just
physical copies. What's that, dude?
Yeah, so there at a time in history there was like printed media, these things called magazines, and I don't know, it's weird life. Yeah, the ancient scrolls.
With the things that bullets go into, or
yeah, yep.
Oh, okay.
Those
Why would you
things.
want to read that?
I don't know, man. But yeah, so sorry to sidetrack, but yeah, if you want to pick up from there, man.
Yeah, I would. That's a good point as far as like, I think like the first time that I like really had felt like I had done something wrong, like really wrong. I think in late elementary school, like it was the first time I saw like porn. I think in middle school, for the most part, it was absent. I think it was probably sprinkled in there. Trying to remember, because I know at some point like it went full tilt towards that, but it was probably somewhere in between, like going into high school, probably in that era.
And was that internet?
Oh
like
yeah,
at that time.
Yeah, at that time, yeah. Yeah, like dial-up internet, like where you had the tones. Oh gosh, that noise is horrible. But I think at that point, yeah, like Cal said, it was like hobbies. Like all I wanted to do was go to the NBA. And at that time, like I was ignorant enough to think I could do it.
Still got time.
So close. If I wouldn't have, like broke my leg, I didn't break my leg. I was just not good. And like, so, like at the time, like 5'4" and super slow.
Muggsy.
Yeah, there you go. Except he was super not slow.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, at that point, like all I cared about was like hanging out with my friends, playing sports and playing video games. So you could say not much has changed a lot, other than I just play way more video games than anything else. But I don't think like at that point I went to public school almost pretty much my whole life. And like for me, I never really saw a need to like have like a faith in anything really. I was just like a kid being a kid. Yeah, I don't know. Even like starting high school, it's not like I ever like I had like I was say like very surface level, but I had a lot of friends in different groups. So I like didn't really my clique was like my youth group friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that probably kept me out of a lot of trouble. But I think it was out of like fear that my parents would literally kill me if I ever did anything like what you would consider bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I ever smoked a cigarette, my dad would cut my tongue out of my mouth, like or something. Like I was like, I'm so scared that I will get caught if I do anything. Because my parents were like, they were so young that they like basically there was no like ignorance gap into like what I would be doing. Like they knew they were just there.
That is a wild
so
thought.
like that scared me. Cause like I remember I was like a habitual liar too.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I remember I would come home late past curfew and like for me that my curfew was like the street lights coming on.
Yeah.
So like I would come home and I would be like racing to get home and I would walk in the door and my dad would be like, "Why are you late?" And for whatever instinctually I'd be like, "What? I'm not late." And he would like pull the curtain to the window and he's like, "Dude, the street lights are right in front of our house. It's on." I was like, it must have just came on when I walked in the door. I don't know. That's so weird. And he'd be like, "You're grounded." Like this is like a monthly occurrence, probably. I would say probably half of my like adolescence I was grounded.
Yeah. Anthony was you rigged up the streetlights to be motion censored so they
100%,
wouldn't come on until you came home.
Dude, if I was that smart, I would have never been grounded.
Only.
And I'd probably be rich.
So what was like that aha moment for you? Like that moment where it clicked, where I guess like for me, like it didn't click with me until I was like 22 years old, where I knew my whole life like I needed Jesus. But then I came to the grips that apart from him, like I have nothing. Like it's like if you
or even if there have been a couple different like kind of stages of moments that have gotten you.
Yeah, I would say it was like a very painful, like in God's eyes, probably, especially like so painfully slow, gradual process.
Yeah.
And it just, yeah, like even in high school, I think I had like a step, I don't know, maybe like 16, 17, where I had moved away from like the Detroit area, and I had and it was so uncomfortable. Like even though I had moved a lot, I had the same friends at the same church for a long time.
And this was your whole family moving, right?
Yeah, my whole family moved away. So yeah, it was after my sophomore year of high school, so like 15, 16. And there, like I think I had like a real dependence. Maybe it wasn't even on God in my own mind, but like people in that church, like I guess were really like inclusive. So it was like I think it was the first time I really felt like somebody like went out of their way and to show Jesus to me, even if I didn't really get it 100%, I kind of got a glimpse of it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that like that summer I went to Africa on a missions trip. And that shook me because at that point I had never been out of the country, especially to like third world.
Yeah. What were you doing on that mission trip in particular?
We would like deliver like rice to like remote villages.
Okay.
Like one village, like I didn't get to see it personally, but they had an exorcism, and I remember just being like, this is actually real. Like this isn't just some like book. Like the Bible's like the stories aren't just some thing that you're supposed to learn lessons from.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the points where it kind of hit me that like it wasn't just some made up thing that makes people feel secure or like feel good. That was scary. That was a really weird like moment. I think it was like, oh, so this stuff's not fake.
Mm-hmm.
And then you think at that point, like I went to Africa, like why would I go there if I didn't think it was real? But I think especially because of like my upbringing, I felt a lot of pressure to kind of like be like everyone else in the church and do what they do and kind of make it seem like I have it figured out. Because if I didn't want people to question me. I didn't want people to like question my family. So I think in that respect, I faked it for a long time. But as far as an aha moment, I can't think of one. I can think of like very small, like snaps, like snapshots of my life. But yeah, I don't know. In high school, I don't think it ever really clicked with me either. I thought it did. I think it was more emotional than anything. Where it's like, oh, this makes me feel good. I feel better when I'm doing these things, and I'm not like screwing up my life, so everybody's happy. Like I'm not letting my parents down, so I think like I'm good. People think that I'm good, so I am good. That's kind of like my mentality was at the time.
What are you up to like now, I guess, like current stages of life?
So right now, outside of like my job, I guess you would I would be considered like a pastor. I don't know. It's a weird thing like to think of. Like I never thought that would be like something that would happen. I think I liked the idea of like, oh, yeah, one day I want to do vocational ministry and be a pastor. But in reality, like now that it's here, I'm like, what did I get myself into? I'm like constantly, because I think constantly daily, I'm like, I have none of this figured out. I have no business like being in like this position.
That gets me so psyched because I don't know. More and more I see that as like even like a requirement for ministry, man. You know, just like to recognize that, like, I don't know, if you were in a place of like, all right, I think I know exactly what this looks like, and like I have it figured out, and like I know just what I can bring to the table, it'd be kind of like, I think you got some pride in the way there, you know. No. Like I've had that mindset in the past with things, and then like God's just continually corrected the heck out of me, where it's just like, nah, man, you're looking at it way wrong, you know.
Yeah, let me show you real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even in that, because like showing that, or like I guess like showing that it's like a not weakness, but this ability to say like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing, is like so countercultural in the Christian world, like with that I grew up in. It was like, okay, make sure no one ever finds out that you're not perfect. Or you'll lose all your influence. Like nobody will want to follow you, which I guess like in reality, I don't want anybody following me anyways.
Yeah.
Like the whole point is like, just imitate me as I imitate Christ, or like try to. But yeah, like everything I was ever either conditioned to think like subconsciously or even taught directly was like, don't show weakness, don't show vulnerability, like just kind of put on this face where like you're stable and like have something that people can look to and like maybe be encouraged by.
Can we talk about how much of a prison that is?
Oh my gosh. It's
can we please?
It's like the only difference really is like it's not real. Like at that point, it's just like this mirage that you put on for people. And it's like, I think behind the scenes, like you're not even really close with Jesus. You don't even really have a relationship at all. And you're like trying to make it seem like you do. So like this whole pressure is, okay, hopefully nobody ever finds out about this other life that I live. Hopefully they don't figure out like all the things that I do that they probably wouldn't agree with. I don't want anybody questioning me. Like even if I am striving to be like Jesus and I'm just doing a terrible job, like I don't want anybody to see that and be like, well, like why? Like that, I think it's just a weird position for anyone to be in. I don't think anybody naturally is like, hey, ask me all about these parts of my life that I want to be reserved for me. And I think at the time, like for me, like especially in high school and even like going on, like the pornography addiction, it would be like I was trying to, especially in high school, it's like, okay, I have to be dating someone like at all times so I don't have to feel like I'm by myself. Or I have to like this status to uphold where Like I don't want to be single, so like I'm just not gonna be. Not because I actually sounds so bad. Not because I actually care about the people I'm dating. I just care about myself and like how it looks to me and how it makes me feel. Yeah, that I think that was like the worst place that I was probably in because I thought that I was doing good because I'm like, oh, dating people is not wrong. Well, looking porn was, but like for me, I was like, well, it's just something I can't beat this as much as I try. So it's just kind of like a part of who I am now. So I think there was a point where I just kind of like found acceptance that like that's the way that it was going to be for me. And I'm just like, nobody could ever know. It was like this constant like fear of if people actually knew who I was, like that would be it. Like every I don't know, like this perspective that people had of me, like it would just be gone. That was terrifying to me because my whole life had been in the church. I'm like, well, if I don't fit in the church, like where do I fit in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not necessarily known for being the most graceful people.
Yeah, I was right there with you, dude. I was the guy that didn't want to be judged, but I was the self-righteous judger.
Yeah.
So,
and I think
I played both.
But yeah, my guess is like the fact that you saw yourself in that light, you probably saw others in that light too, where like if other people were dropping the ball, there was probably some error of like, all right, they messed up their testimony, they messed up,
Yeah. Or it was like in some like really sick way, it was like, okay, because like they're getting the attention and there's just public now, like it's just another eye that's not close to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess it was just like a really toxic way to live.
So
but at the time, I don't think I realized that.
Yeah. So I want to come back to that. But first I want to talk a little bit about, and not throwing anybody under the bus with like names or whatever,
Got it.
But you said that maybe some of those things were subconsciously communicated, or maybe between the lines, as far as like putting on like this fake it till you make it type of attitude. Where do you see that coming from? Do you think that those were things that were directly said, or were they things that were kind of just underneath the surface, and like other things that were said kind of contributed to that mindset?
Yeah, I don't think anybody, and I hope not, I don't think anybody had like ever really like bluntly said to me, hey, don't let people see what you don't want them to see. I think people's lives lived out that I knew, whether it was like stuff that people had done and like I saw how they would live in reaction to like all that, or even my family. Like if you live with people, like you know what they do, all their shortcomings. And like I said, like my parents were great. They didn't have any like deal breaker issues, but like they have struggles just like everyone else. And I'd be like, ugh, like I know, like everybody thought that my parents like were like, and not that they're not in the Christian. It's just like this superstar mentality where I'm like, okay, yes, they are, now that I'm older and like I see like all the struggles of being an adult, and like I can't blame anybody for anything for the most part. But like for me, it was like, okay, there's a lot of times just because of the way that my family is like set up to where my brother and sister are super close in age, but like my brother's 9 years younger than me.
Oh, wow.
So they would get a lot of attention, and like I would be like 14, 15, 16 years old, and I'm like, I literally am invisible. Or at least like that's how I felt. So I was like, well, like the perspective of them, like in the church's eyes, like didn't match my perspective. I was like, they seem like pretty like unloving to me. And to be fair, like it was like their first time parenting a teenager. So like, they're probably like, I don't know what to do. This is nuts.
Yeah.
Cause like for me, I was, like at some points where like I was cutting and like dating like like too many people. So they're probably like, I don't know, what do I do?
Did they know that was up, or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They eventually found out. Like I said, they were too young not to. They were smart, and I was stupid. I wasn't very good at hiding things.
Yeah.
But I think no, I don't think I was ever directly told that. But like people would be like, okay, you have to like like serving is the most important thing in the world. It was like a big thing. Like where I was at for a long time, where it's like if you're not serving, like you're basically, and like they would never say this either, but like you're useless to the body if you're not serving. But serving is a great thing. But when it's presented in that way and pushed and like abused,
Like
it just
like pressure placed on you.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
if your faith is real, like this is what you
Yeah.
should be doing. Yeah.
And if you're not doing it, then like you must not really like have like a faith, like a relationship with Jesus, or like it's lacking, or there's something wrong with you if you're not helping me. So that I think that was a big thing. Was just being like over pressured, overworked, and like volunteering. I don't know. I think it was more so just like once you would get to know people better, you would just see how they would act in front of like the church and how they would act with you. And it just didn't match up, myself included. But I think it always ate at me. And it was probably because I had my own guilt and own conviction. But yeah, I think that's mostly where it stemmed from, was seeing people like the real side of them, which was honestly for me, I always liked that side of people better, even though it didn't look good.
Yeah.
And they probably did a lot of stuff that was terrible. But at least it was real. But yeah, and then at that point, I think just the mid 2000s era was kind of like that. If you look at the church, Christian music especially was like all these people. It's like cool. It was like cool to be Christian, like with the title, but it wasn't actually cool to follow Jesus.
Right.
So I think that's kind of where like the root of it was for me.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And then too, like the lives of people that I guess have served, and maybe their sin became public, or something they were struggling with became public, and the way that they were treated afterward, like it made you not want to even talk to people. It seemed as if like, and this is just my own speculation, it seemed as if like those people just kind of just fell away and like disappeared. And like you never heard from them. And then when you did see them or talk to them, they were like a shell of a person almost,
like, it was super weird because that was my experience of being a student. Like my leaders in high school were extremely flaky, inconsistent, had their fallouts with the church, like you name it. And like luckily I had one really good, like constant guy that stuck for like 3-4 years. And he is probably like the only reason I didn't like give up.
Hey, who is that? If you're
Drew Grows.
Oh, dude.
And like the most
dude's legit.
It's fun. It's funny. It's like the most non-flashy leader, like super chill guy. Like everything, like at that point, like everything that youth ministry was not. And I feel like those people got so underappreciated. Like, especially then it was like big, like loud music, like it was all about the event, like the show of it. Just because like you're like, oh, fun will bring students in, and to a point, like it did work. It did bring. Well, I would say it didn't work. It brought people in. It didn't really show them Jesus. Luckily, I think God did reveal Himself to a lot of people through it.
Yeah.
But I just think, at that point, it just didn't really create this like a bunch of Christians. It just created a bunch of kids that like to have fun. But as far as Drew was awesome. Drew like always knew like the crap that I was going through, and he wasn't shy to kind of like put me in my place. I think that was a big thing too, is like challenging people in the right way. Did wonders for me, because I can get pretty apathetic whether it comes to spiritual just or in life. But people that can like learn how to challenge people without pissing them off, like is just a skill that I think it gets overlooked way too much.
Man.
I think that looks
Ugh.
like going the distance with people and like, yeah, getting into their lives and uncomfortability, you know?
Mhm.
But yeah, just in a way that shows that, yeah, I give a crap about you, not like
Yeah.
I'm trying to like change you, but
Mhm.
that's sick.
Yeah, and the opposite is true too. Like I don't want a bunch of people that are just going to be like, "Oh man, like you're not. It's okay that you like did this, or it's okay that you can stay where you're at. It's okay to be like stagnant for a little bit. It's okay to like, I don't know. It's okay to not be okay." Like that was a big coin phrase. I feel like for a while, which
Yeah.
to a point is true, but you can't stay there.
Right.
Like I don't want people that are just not going to push me and just going to be like, "Oh, you're doing such a great job."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What, are you blind?" Like I feel like crap.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need this. This is a waste of my time. So I think, yeah, it's just there's such a fine line and like a happy medium to finding people that won't just baby you and like say everything's good, but also like people that aren't jerks.
Yeah.
When they
Mhm.
try to like, I don't know, they're not there to challenge you. They're there to bury you to make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
So unfortunately,
That's a hard thing. Like for, I guess like even me, and when I was a youth leader, that was one of the things I had to learn is I had really high expectations out of my students, and the Lord really convicted me about that. Like, you know, in the exact same way that He's been patient with me, like you're not going to plant the seed and reap the fruit in the same day. Like that's just not realistic. It doesn't happen. Um, and our word long suffering just keeps coming back. We're like
Pretty much every episode for like the last 2 months.
seriously, every episode has been about long suffering and how that produces the most like fruit over time is being committed to God's work in a person and not being committed to what that person can do or how that person can make you feel, or if your students following Jesus has become a mark of your success, which like is a good thing, but if it's based on ambition, that's bad. But
Mm.
if it's based on prayer, that's really good because your ambition will force the results on them, and then it'll make them hate you, and like it'll make them discouraged instead of you seeing their potential and you helping them to like through Christ be all they can be in Him. And that
Yeah,
was like a hard thing. It was a hard pill for me to swallow when he brought that to my attention. I realized that I was doing that, so I have to apologize to my kids. Like I apologize to those guys about that. Like, dude, I'm not. I had such high expectations of you guys, and not like in a bad way where I don't expect anything from you, but like you guys were at some place in my life dictating my success, and that's not okay. And like I'm sorry I treated you guys that way. And it helped our relationship grow stronger together, like as a unit.
yeah. It's funny how like there's so many things that are just aren't like bad within themselves. It's like the heart behind everything. I feel like it's always the driving force or like the tipping point. Like
But
yeah,
why?
wanting to your students to succeed is not obviously not bad. But yeah, when it becomes like, oh, I want to become like such a good leader, or I want like this influence, or I want this recognition,
Mm-hmm.
then it just collapses on itself. And it's unfortunate because even in those things, like God's good and He like redeems those things and works in spite of just like our toxicity. I don't know, like yeah, that's wild to think like you could be doing something that's so good, but just like rotting your soul in the process.
Mhm. And I think what's reproduced in those moments is not the good that happens, but it's like the heart behind it. Do you know what I mean? Like if
Mhm.
I'm doing something with the wrong motives or with the wrong heart, like the people that are like, you know, following you in ministry, like I think more often than not, they're going to develop those same heart issues and like approach other things with the wrong attitude or with the wrong motive, or with like the need for recognition. Like, I mean, I've seen that in myself. Like, it's very rare that someone will be like, oh, they're a really great example of this, and it inspires you to do the same thing, but with a different heart behind it, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
And
totally.
it's I think like the whole like what I see in like church culture is like it's become so results driven, where it's like, okay, let's get this many people into the church. Let's plant this many campuses. Let's get this many salvations. Like for a long time, and still to this day, like I see so many things where it's like we had blank amount of people at church this week. We had this many like salvations, and like we were talking about, none of that stuff is bad. Like, of course, you want people to come to meet Jesus, but like you think of, and somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's Jeremiah where he's like, hey, like you're basically gonna give my word to Israel your whole life and you're not gonna bear any fruit. And he's like, will you still do it? And I always come back to that because like for me, it can become very discouraging to like invest into people, put all your time into ministry, like put all this time into the word, and get to the end of the day and like you feel like the harvest is nothing, and you're just like, well, what the heck am I even doing this for? And I think it took a long time for me to realize like God was saying like, do it. You're doing it for me. Like you're not doing it for yourself. You're not even doing it for other people.
Yeah.
Like ministry and church, like none of that is like for you. It's like, I don't know. It's just like this question that we don't ask is like, hey, is God happy with what we're doing here? Like, is God pleased? Because I think it's fairly easy to make something that pleases ourselves and like pleases others. But like the question of, okay, am I doing this because I love Jesus? It's just a question that's asked far too few times. I don't know. That's my take on like that aspect of church, like being results based is it's not about results. It's about loving God.
Yeah. It's about faithfulness. Like at the root of it in Acts, when the church multiplied, it was because like the apostles devoted themselves to like the word of God, and from their faithfulness, the Lord brought increase. Like the apostles didn't have a marketing scheme for the first church of Antioch. They didn't like print pamphlets. They weren't blowing up Instagram. They weren't like trying to get a bunch of people to come, which like in of itself is not a bad thing, but we also have to, I guess, be consciously aware of what we're presenting, or are we even letting people know what they're invited into? Rather than like, hey, come to our church building and fill our churches and make them look like big and make them look full and make them look like they're giving people purpose. But like, I guess like, are we really equipping people to know how free they are in Christ, what Jesus has really done for them, and who they're meant to be in Him? Like, what are we inviting them into? That's like a thought that I think of a lot, and it's changed the way that I even like. I barely ever tell people to come to my church. I'm almost afraid to, in a way. Like if I talk to someone in public, because I don't want it to seem like a plug or anything. Like I'm not here for that. Like at the end of the day, like if God has touched you through me, that's awesome. That's gonna stick. And wherever He leads you, He's gonna lead you. Like you don't have to be a part of my particular church to be a Christian. Like if you're following the Spirit, you're gonna go wherever He wants you to go, and you're gonna be fruitful. Like you're gonna multiply. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, like our job as Christians is to give people Jesus, not really like give them acceptance.
Yeah.
Because like it seems like that would be the nice thing to do, but at the end, like you're depriving them
of intimacy, because they'll end up putting you in the place where they need to put the Lord, and at that point they can only be let down. Like it's not a pretty thing to say, but it's true. Like at any point where we give a person that type of leeway that we should give Jesus, we've ultimately set ourselves up to fail, because that person in and of themselves need the Lord just as much as the other person does. Like I am the beggar who knows where the bread is. I'm not I'm not the one who supplies. Like I get my supply from Him as well. So like I'm pointing people to where He is and plugging them into like the root, and not into my branch in particular, but giving them the source.
Yeah, and like talking a little bit ago about like leaders who fell or whatnot, just that kind of, when we put pastors and like leaders on a pedestal. You know, it's like this vicious cycle that feeds into itself. You know, like leaders that are put onto a pedestal feel the pressure to not be transparent and like to allow their flaws to be seen, and like that just kind of continually feeds into itself and has a trickle down effect to everyone who's following that person, where it's just like, all right, like, yeah, I want to like look good like that person. Even if that's never said, you know, just kind of giving that perception, like Calvin has brought up in the past, and this has like been a focus of pretty much every conversation since. I feel like just that like we aren't the hero of our story, and like looking at the Bible, like it's full of broken people that, and I think all the time, like, man, if I was like, well, pretty much anybody, but like David, you know, like the fact that I don't know, like so much of his dirty laundry is just like known for you know, centuries, millennia now, you know, like that it's just like, oh, this guy was like jacked up, you know, and like really got things wrong the majority of the time. Like we know that narrative, and we also have all of these scriptures of him like crying out to God, like recognizing his need to rely on God, you know. But yeah, I don't know. I want to see more of that, like in myself and just in the church in general, you know, just like to that, exactly what you said, Calvin, just like seeing that, you know, we know where the bread comes from. We are not the supplier.
I mean, speaking like with David, it's crazy because like you said, all of his junk is just there. And like he still gets the title of man after God's own heart. Like that always blew my mind. I'm like, you this guy? I'm like, come on, man. This dude has done worse things than I've ever done. And I don't know, like that. I don't know, it gives me hope. Because like I always thought like if I had a Bible book, like the book of me, without sounding totally heretical, within context, somebody's gonna clip that.
We're gonna just like that's gonna be the episode.
That's gonna be the title of the gosh,
the Gospel of Anthony.
Anyways, no. But I want it to look like that, like the rest of the like those books where it's like, okay, God showed up big time, and like this, and it's not, and always it doesn't point to me, like I'm not the main character. But I think in reality, like if that was to exist, like it would look pretty tame. It would look pretty boring. It would look pretty much like, I don't know, like a documentary, or just be like, oh, this is what I do in my life, and then I go to sleep, and I wake up and I do it all over again. I don't know. It's a constant, like that's a reality check for me.
Yeah, no joke. I love too, like how at the end of it all, it points back to like even with God, like David being a man after God's own heart. So much of it points to God's faithfulness to David to keep his promise. Like that's super encouraging too, because David gave the Lord every reason to abandon him, but yet still the Father did not. And like at the end of the day, like that's all of our stories, where like all of us have given God every reason to walk away and label us a lost cause. But the fact that he didn't, and the fact that he still fully came after us, and he didn't spare like his own son to have us, like it speaks so much to his heart of like how much he actually really, 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 really loves us and wants community and unity with us.
For
like,
sure.
To be family.
Yeah, and even within that, and like I'm pretty sure, like Cal, I showed you that this David Platt sermon the other day.
Oh yeah,
where it's just like you look at the people of Israel, and he's like, I don't like spare you and like pursue you for your sake. He's like, it's not about you. It's so that I get the glory. And Platt's funny. Like me and Cal always talk about, the dude just gives off a serious serial killer vibe. But like, if like we always say, like if that dude didn't know Jesus, like 100% would be like murdering people. Like he gives me the creeps.
I don't even know.
But luckily he's not doing that. and he like says really, really wise things that changed my life. But yeah, like there's this whole idea. Yeah, just I'll just glaze over that and go back. Like that whole idea of like it is true. Like God, like John 3:16, like I mean everybody knows it. Like God so loved the world, like that's all of us. Like yes, God loved us so much that He gave His Son. But like don't get it twisted. Like God loves you, but it's not about you. God doesn't love you so that you can be like, oh, now I feel loved.
Mm-hmm.
No, like the whole point is like God has saved you for His glory, and then like you're supposed to tell others like for the good, like for the common good, like the good of everyone else. Which is just like a whole different way of looking at it. Like it's just less of me, more of Him. Like just putting that pride aside. Because you think like, oh yeah, like God loves me. Like that's just that's a Sunday school thing. Like we all did it. Anyone that like grew up in church at all. But I don't know. Like at some point gives off the wrong message. Like, hey, you're not the center of like God saving you.
There it is.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if you see your story in this light, Anthony, but I've seen mine in this light, and I think that it may relate to you too. Just that like there's so much emphasis put on like salvation and accepting Christ that sometimes we don't get to a point of like, what were we saved for? There's so much emphasis on what were we saved from and not so much emphasis on what were we saved for, and just that like the end of the story is not the moment that you accepted Christ and then like everything's good, in a lot of ways, like, maybe you didn't have like a lot of the saved from,
before.
But that's kind of irrelevant. You were, you were nonetheless like saved for the glory of God, and to point people towards Him. I think sometimes we stop at that point of like, all right, what was I saved from, and never get beyond that. And just, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I definitely think like that's one of the biggest pitfalls of Christianity, at least in America, is I've always been, that's some pineapple. Nice.
It's mango.
Oh, close.
Kendra brought me mango.
That's some really yellow mango. Anyways, like that big pitfall is, I remember I've heard so many testimonies over the years, and it's always stopped at like, and this is how I got saved. And everybody claps and like, that's amazing. But it's like, oh crap, what now?
Right.
Yeah.
It's always been like, what about like what's after this? And like the church over like the last couple of generations has like lost the ability to one, like really disciple people, and really show them what it like looks like to follow Jesus like every day, like because Jesus says like take up your cross daily and follow me. Like you have to die to yourself. Like these are just not things that like we teach anymore. I don't really know what sparked me to kind of finally realize that, but I don't know. Yeah, it's just that whole like building a culture of it's just about getting to the point of accepting Jesus, and then basically you can just coast into heaven until you die. And again, like none of this stuff is really said directly, but it's like this innate, it's just planted somehow in people. It's just like that whole idea of it's like salvation happens in a moment, but like becoming like Jesus, like it literally, like the Bible tells us to be perfect as like your Father is perfect. And like that's just a crazy idea, and I think people shy away from it because it's like it's almost overwhelming. They're like, where do I even begin? Like I can't even, like I sin every 5 minutes. Like how am I supposed to be perfect? I don't know. And it takes community. There's so many aspects to it, but I think like the church being unified and like being one, I think will go a long way into like helping people like realize that it's possible. Like that is possible. maybe you'll never get there, but the goal is to always be striving to be like Jesus as much as you can.
Mhm.
And you
And it's
can't really do that by yourself.
And it's not about your
Yeah.
effort anyway,
No.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like I'm going to be like Jesus because one, I love him. Two, that's what he's called me to, so I'm going to follow. Like it's really that simple.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Our whole lives lived to Christ is grace driven. Like our obedience is grace driven. Like it's not works driven at all. Like it's because God has been so good to me. He's so merciful. I desire to live my life this way to him as a thank you. And like if that means sharing my faith with another believer, so be it. If that means praying for someone, so be it. If that means me letting a person I don't know live with me for a couple months to show them what it means to have family, then so be it. Like there's a lot of that gets missed when it's so focused on getting people saved and not actually getting them walking in relationship with the Lord. Because like I think the hyper grace thing we kind of just feel like we've adopted it. Like, well, everything is covered by grace, like someone will disciple that guy, like someone will do this, or like we'll take all of those things that God has welled up inside of us and we'll put them off on other members of the church, and then eventually they're doing the same thing and nothing gets done. So like if all of us really did take the reins like on our personal walks with Jesus and really did take that next step of intimacy, we would probably see a more effective church, because everyone's not a Christian for themselves, but they're a Christian for the glory of God, and they actually believe that.
Yeah.